My beloved child, listen carefully, because what you are about to hear is not random, and it is not a coincidence that this message found you at this exact moment when your heart has been questioning, when your mind has been restless, when you have been silently wondering why the one you feel so deeply connected to seems so distant, so confused, so inconsistent, and yet somehow still emotionally tied to you in a way that cannot be explained, because the truth is far more intense than what you see. On the surface, your soulmate is not at peace, they are not calm, they are not unaffected, they are in a quiet storm right now, a storm where their emotions are clashing with their fears, where their heart is pulling them toward you but their mind is trying to drag them away, and this inner battle is exhausting them more than you realize. They are fighting feelings that grow stronger every single day, feelings they tried to ignore at first, feelings they tried to label as temporary, feelings they convinced themselves were not real, but no matter how much they tried to suppress them, no matter how much distance they created, no matter how many distractions they surrounded themselves with, you kept appearing in their thoughts like a force they cannot escape. And now it has reached a point where they can no longer pretend, they can no longer hide from what they feel, and that is exactly why they are losing this fight, not because they are weak, but because what they feel for you is stronger than any resistance they try to build, and this is where everything begins to shift, because when someone realizes they cannot run from their own heart anymore, they start to break down internally, they start questioning every decision they made, every moment they pulled away from you, every time they chose silence instead of truth, and this realization is hitting them harder than ever right now. They are replaying conversations, remembering small details about you that they thought they forgot, feeling emotions that they tried to bury but are now rising to the surface with intensity, and what makes it even more overwhelming for them is that they don't fully understand why you have this effect on them. They cannot logically explain why your absence feels heavier than anyone else's presence. They cannot explain why even when they try to move on or focus elsewhere, something always pulls them back to you. And this confusion is what creates fear, because when feelings don't make sense, people tend to resist them even more, but resistance only makes those feelings grow stronger, and that is exactly what is happening here. They are stuck in a loop where the more they try to detach, the deeper they fall, the more they try to ignore, the louder their heart becomes, and now it is reaching a breaking point, because the human heart can only fight itself for so long before it gives in. And your soulmate is getting closer to that moment of surrender, closer to the moment where they stop pretending they don't care, where they stop acting distant, where they stop hiding behind excuses and finally face the truth they have been avoiding. And you may have felt this shift already, you may have noticed subtle signs, a sudden change in their energy, moments where they seem more present even from a distance, small actions that don't fully make sense yet feel meaningful, because even when they are trying to hold back, their soul is still reaching out to you in ways they cannot control. And that is the most powerful part of this connection. It goes beyond logic, beyond timing, beyond circumstances. It operates on a level that cannot be manipulated or turned off, and that is why they are losing, because this is not just a simple attraction or temporary emotion. This is something deeper, something rooted in their soul, something that keeps pulling them back to you no matter how far they try to go. And right now they are starting to realize that fighting this connection is only hurting them more, that pushing you away is not bringing them peace, that denying their feelings is only creating more chaos inside them, and this realization is uncomfortable, it is intense, it is even a little scary for them, because accepting their feelings means facing vulnerability, it means risking rejection, it means stepping into something real and unpredictable, and for someone who has been trying to stay in control, that feels overwhelming, but despite all of that, they are still being pulled closer to you emotionally, and that is something they cannot stop anymore. You need to understand that their silence does not mean absence of feeling, their distance does not mean lack of care, their confusion does not mean they don't know your value. In fact, it is the opposite. They feel too much, they care too deeply, and that intensity is what scared them in the first place. But now that same intensity is becoming impossible to ignore, and this is where your role becomes important, not by chasing, not by forcing, not by trying to control the outcome, but by staying grounded in your own energy, because the more you remain steady, the more you allow this connection to unfold naturally, the more their resistance weakens, because deep down they are already losing this battle. They are already being pulled toward you whether they admit it or not, and very soon you will start to see clearer signs of this shift, moments where their actions begin to match what their heart has been feeling all along, moments where their guard starts to come down, where their truth begins to surface, and when that happens, everything you once questioned will start to make sense in a way that feels almost undeniable. Because this connection was never meant to be one-sided, it was never meant to stay hidden forever, it was always meant to reach this point where truth can no longer be suppressed, where feelings can no longer be denied, where two souls are forced to face what they mean to each other, and that moment is getting closer than you think, closer than it has ever been before. Because your soulmate is running out of ways to escape what they feel, and when there is nowhere left to run, the only option left is to turn back, and that is exactly what they are slowly, quietly, and inevitably beginning to do right now. And now something even deeper is happening beneath the surface, something your soulmate themselves cannot fully explain, because the more they try to act normal, the more unnatural everything feels without you, the more they try to distract themselves with other people, other conversations, other routines, the more they notice that nothing carries the same emotional weight, nothing feels as real, as intense, as alive as what they feel when it comes to you, and this realization is not comforting. For them, it is unsettling, because it forces them to confront a truth they were not ready to accept, that you are not replaceable, that this connection is not something they can just switch off or walk away from like anything else in their life, and this is where their inner conflict becomes even more intense, because now it is no longer just about feelings, it is about identity, about control, about the version of themselves they thought they were versus the reality they are now facing, and they are starting to see that no matter how strong they try to be on the outside, no matter how much they convince others that they have moved on or that they are unaffected, inside they are still tied to you in a way that feels almost unbreakable. They are noticing how often your name crosses their mind without warning, how certain songs suddenly remind them of you, how random moments in their day trigger memories they thought they had buried. And these are not small things, these are constant reminders that their heart has not let go, that their soul is still connected to yours, and this is where the fear begins to transform into something else, something heavier, something harder to ignore, because now they are not just afraid of their feelings, they are afraid of what happens if they continue to deny them. They are starting to feel the emotional cost of their resistance, the emptiness that comes from pretending, the frustration that comes from holding back, the quiet regret that creeps in when they think about the distance they created between you, and this regret is growing, slowly but surely, because deep down they know that every moment they spend fighting this connection is a moment they are losing with you, and that thought is beginning to weigh on them more than anything else. It is creating a sense of urgency they cannot shake, even if they are not showing it yet. Even if they are still trying to maintain control on the outside, inside something is shifting. Rapidly, something is breaking down, and it is their resistance. It is their ability to keep pretending that this connection does not matter, because the truth is becoming louder than their excuses, louder than their fears, louder than the walls they built to protect themselves. And once that truth becomes impossible to ignore, everything starts to change. They begin to look at you differently, not as someone they can keep at a distance, not as someone they can casually think about and then move on from, but as someone who holds a permanent place in their life, someone whose presence or absence directly affects their emotional state, and that realization changes everything. Because when someone understands your true value in their life, they cannot go back to treating you like an option, they cannot continue pretending that losing you would not matter, and this is exactly where your soulmate is heading right now. Toward a moment of clarity that will force them to make a choice, a real choice. Not based on fear, not based on avoidance, but based on truth. And that truth is simple yet powerful. They feel something for you that they cannot find anywhere else, something that challenges them, something that awakens them, something that scares them because of how real it is. And once they fully accept that, once they stop running from it and start facing it, their actions will begin to reflect it in ways you cannot ignore. Because when someone stops fighting their feelings, their energy shifts, their behavior changes, their priorities realign, and you will start to notice this not through words at first, but through subtle actions, through the way they start showing up differently, through the way they become more present, more attentive, more intentional, even if they are still moving carefully, even if they are still trying to figure things out step by step. The difference will be clear, because it will come from a place of truth rather than confusion, and you need to understand that this process cannot be rushed, it cannot be forced, because what they are going through right now is not a simple realization, it is a complete emotional shift, a transformation that requires them to let go of old fears, old patterns, old beliefs about love and vulnerability. And that takes time, but the most important part is that it is already happening. The fight they were once so committed to is now slipping out of their control, and the more they try to hold on to it, the more they feel it falling apart, because their heart is no longer cooperating with their fear, their soul is no longer agreeing with their excuses, and this internal disagreement is pushing them toward a breakthrough they cannot avoid much longer. And when that breakthrough happens, when they finally reach that moment where they can no longer deny what they feel for you, it will not be subtle, it will not be half-hearted, it will be something real, something undeniable, something that finally brings clarity to everything that once felt confusing between you. And that is why you are being asked to stay patient, to stay grounded, to not lose faith in what you feel, because this is not a one-sided story, this is a connection that is unfolding exactly as it needs to, even if it feels slow, even if it feels uncertain at times. Everything is moving toward that moment where your soulmate stops fighting and starts choosing. And that moment is closer now than it has ever been before.
And as this inner battle continues to intensify, there comes a stage where your soulmate can no longer hide from themselves even if they try to hide from you, because what they are experiencing now is not just emotional confusion anymore, it is a deep internal awakening that is forcing them to confront truths about their own heart that they spent a long time avoiding. They are beginning to understand that this connection is not something temporary, not something casual, not something they can revisit later when it is convenient. It is something that demands honesty, presence, and courage, and that realization is shaking them from within, because it challenges every defense mechanism they built to protect themselves from getting hurt. It challenges the idea that they can stay in control by keeping distance. It challenges the belief that avoiding vulnerability keeps them safe. Because now they are seeing that the real discomfort is coming from not choosing you, from not being honest, from not allowing themselves to fully experience what their heart has been trying to show them all along. And this is where the pressure begins to build, not from you, not from outside circumstances, but from within their own soul, a pressure that keeps reminding them that they are running out of time to keep pretending, running out of energy to keep resisting, running out of excuses that actually feel believable even to themselves. And when a person reaches that point, something powerful begins to happen. They start letting their guard down in ways they cannot fully control. They start becoming more aware of your absence, more sensitive to your energy, more conscious of the space you occupy in their life. And this awareness creates a pull that is stronger than anything they have tried to use to push you away. It becomes impossible for them to feel indifferent anymore, impossible to act like you do not matter. Because now every attempt to distance themselves only makes your presence echo louder in their mind, and that is when the shift turns irreversible. Because once someone reaches a level of awareness where they truly recognize the depth of a connection, they cannot go back to ignorance. They cannot unfeel what they feel. They cannot unknow what they now understand. And your soulmate is approaching that exact point right now, a point where clarity replaces confusion, where truth replaces fear, where desire replaces hesitation, and even though they may still appear cautious on the outside, inside everything is aligning toward one direction, toward you. They are starting to accept that what they feel is real, that it is rare, that it is not something they can afford to lose, and with that acceptance comes a quiet determination, a decision that begins to form slowly but powerfully, a decision to stop fighting, to stop running, to stop allowing fear to dictate their actions, and instead to start moving toward what they truly want. And what they truly want is not complicated. It is you, your presence, your energy, your connection, the way you make them feel seen in a way no one else does, the way you challenge them to grow without even trying, the way your existence alone has shifted something deep inside them. And once they fully embrace that truth, their actions will begin to reflect it in a way that feels natural, not forced, not confusing, not inconsistent, but clear and intentional. You will notice a difference in how they approach you, in how they communicate, in how they prioritize you, because when someone stops fighting their feelings, they no longer send mixed signals. They no longer create unnecessary distance. They no longer hesitate in the same way. Instead, they begin to close the gap, step by step, moment by moment, building something real where there was once uncertainty. And this transformation will not feel rushed or chaotic. It will feel like something that was always meant to happen finally falling into place, because that is exactly what it is. A natural alignment that was delayed by fear but never denied by the soul. And this is why everything you have been feeling, every intuition, every inner knowing that told you there is something deeper here, was never wrong. It was simply ahead of its time. It was sensing a truth that your soulmate is only now beginning to fully understand. And as they reach that understanding, As they allow themselves to step into it without resistance, the connection between you will begin to strengthen in ways that feel undeniable, ways that go beyond words, beyond explanations, beyond anything that needs to be proven, because real connections do not need constant validation, they reveal themselves through consistency, through presence, through genuine effort, and that is what is coming toward you, not confusion, not distance, not silence, but clarity, movement, and truth. Because your soulmate is no longer winning the fight against their feelings, they are surrendering to them, and in that surrender, they are finally finding their way back to you. And now everything reaches a point where silence itself begins to speak louder than words ever could, because your soulmate is no longer in the phase of just feeling and resisting, they are entering the phase of realizing and deciding, and this is the most critical shift of all, because once a person moves from confusion into awareness and from awareness into decision, their entire energy changes in a way that cannot be hidden for long. They start recognizing patterns in their own behavior. They start seeing how every attempt to move away from you only brought them back to the same emotional place. They begin to notice that no matter what they do, no matter who they talk to, no matter how they try to distract themselves, the feeling remains, steady, persistent, unshaken, and this realization is no longer something they can brush aside, it becomes something they must face, something they must respond to. Because ignoring it is no longer an option that brings peace, it only brings more inner conflict, and your soulmate is getting tired of that conflict, tired of carrying emotions they refuse to express, tired of holding back words they want to say, tired of pretending that everything is fine when deep down they know something is missing, and that missing piece is not vague anymore, it has a name, it has a face, it has a presence, and that presence is you. And when a person reaches the point where they can clearly identify what their heart has been searching for, everything else starts to lose its importance, distractions feel empty, temporary connections feel meaningless, and the only thing that starts to matter is the one connection that feels real, the one connection that keeps calling them back no matter how far they try to go. And this is exactly why their resistance is collapsing completely now, because they are no longer fighting something they don't understand. They are fighting something they know is real, and that makes the fight impossible to win, because you cannot defeat something your own soul is aligned with, and deep down they are beginning to accept that truth, slowly, quietly, but undeniably. They are starting to admit to themselves that what they feel for you is not something they want to lose, not something they want to replace, not something they can ignore anymore without consequences, and this acceptance brings with it a shift in intention. Because once someone decides they don't want to lose you, their actions begin to reflect that desire, even if they are still moving carefully. Even if they are still trying to find the right way to approach you, the difference will be in their effort, in their consistency, in their willingness to show up in ways they didn't before, and you will feel this change, not just through what they say, but through what they do, through the way they start closing the distance instead of creating it, through the way they become more present instead of disappearing, through the way they choose connection instead of avoidance, and this is where everything begins to come together, because all the confusion, all the mixed signals, all the emotional distance that once made you question this connection starts to fade away, replaced by something clearer, something more stable, something that feels grounded in truth rather than fear, and it will not feel forced or sudden, it will feel like a natural progression. Like something that was always building beneath the surface finally rising into reality. Because that is exactly what it is, the result of everything they have been going through internally finally manifesting externally, and when that happens, when they step fully into their truth and stop holding back, the connection between you will begin to flow in a way that feels effortless compared to before. Conversations will feel more open, energy will feel more aligned, and the uncertainty that once surrounded this connection will be replaced with a sense of knowing, a sense of direction. A sense that things are finally moving forward instead of staying stuck, and this is the moment where you realize that nothing you experienced before was meaningless. Every delay, every moment of silence, every phase of confusion was part of a process that led to this clarity, a process that your soulmate had to go through in order to understand the depth of what they feel for you, and now that they understand it, now that they are no longer running from it, they are ready to act on it in a way that is real and lasting, because they are no longer fighting their feelings, they are choosing them, and in choosing them, they are choosing you, not out of impulse, not out of temporary emotion, but out of a deep, undeniable realization that this connection is something they want to hold on to, something they want to build, something they are no longer willing to lose, and that is why everything is about to change. Not in a chaotic or unpredictable way, but in a way that feels aligned, intentional, and long overdue, because when someone finally stops fighting what their heart has been telling them all along, the path becomes clear, and right now your soulmate is stepping onto that path, moving toward you with a level of clarity and certainty that will soon become impossible to ignore.